Most people think communication is about talking, saying the right words at the right time. But here's the truth, it's really about control. And every day, without even realizing it, you give that control away. In this talk, I'm going to show you 3 common communication mistakes that quietly sabotage your conversations, and how to fix them so you can stay calm, confident, and in control, no matter who you're talking to. When people think about control in a conversation, they usually picture power. They imagine being the loudest voice in the room, having the last word, or convincing someone to finally agree with them. But that's not real control. Real control has nothing to do with dominating the other person and everything to do with regulating yourself. See, control isn't about what they say or do. It's about what you say and do in response. That's where most of us start to slip without even noticing. We walk into a conversation calm and collected, and within a few minutes our tone changes, our heart's racing, and we're either talking too much or shutting down completely. And here's the thing, most of the time, it's not because the other person forced us there. It's because we handed them the keys. Think about the last time you had an argument with someone you care about. Maybe they said something that hit a nerve. Maybe they raised their voice, rolled their eyes, or brought up something you thought was off limits. So it was off. In that moment, you felt yourself tighten up, and right there, before you even opened your mouth, you gave up control. Not because you were weak or wrong, but because you let their behavior dictate yours. And that's what this whole talk is about. The 3 mistakes we'll cover today are things we do that give away control piece by piece until there's nothing left to hold on to. The first step in fixing that is understanding that no one can take your control from you. You can only give it away. And give it away. Here's the truth most people miss. Staying in control doesn't mean staying silent or pretending you don't care. It means making a choice about how you show up. You decide what you say it, and when you say it, you decide whether you're going to engage or disengage. Now, you decide if you're going to escalate or de-escalate, and you can't do any of that if you're on autopilot, reacting to every little thing like a puppet on strings. When you start to see control this way, everything shifts. Suddenly, someone's bad mood doesn't automatically ruin your day. Their sarcasm doesn't automatically drag you into a fight. Their frustration doesn't automatically have to become your frustration. Because here's the thing, you don't need their permission to stay calm. If you've ever left a conversation thinking, why did I let them get to me like that? This is why. That's not that they were stronger or louder or smarter. It's that you let their words set the rules and you started playing their game instead of your own. The rest of what we're going to cover builds on this simple truth. Control starts and ends with you. And if you don't protect it, you'll lose it before you even know it's gone. One of the fastest ways to give away control in a conversation is to react instead of pause. And here's the tricky part. You won't even notice it happening in the moment. It's almost automatic. And someone says something sharp, unfair, completely wrong, and before you've even had a chance to think, you're firing back. It feels like defending yourself, like standing your ground. But what you're really doing is stepping right into the trap they've set, and now they're leading the conversation instead of you. Think about it like this. Every conversation has 2 tracks. There's the track of what's actually being said, and then there's the emotional track, the undercurrent of tone, energy and emotion running beneath the words. When someone is angry, sarcastic, or defensive, they're inviting you onto their track. In the moment you react without pausing, you've accepted the invitation. You've left your track, and now they're steering the direction. That's why pausing is so powerful. A pause isn't weakness, and it's not avoidance. It's a strategy. It's that one deep breath between their words and your response where you decide what happens next. Without it, you're just giving your power away one reaction at a time. Here's what happens when you skip that pause. The conversation escalates. You go from calmly addressing an issue to matching their tone, maybe even raising your voice. Suddenly, you're arguing about how you're talking instead of what you're talking about. And by the time it's over, nothing is resolved, and you walk away feeling drained and frustrated. I've seen this play out 1,000 different ways. A boss makes a cutting remark, and you immediately defend yourself. A family member criticizes you, and you instantly push back. A friend brings up something sensitive, and you feel the need to explain. Or justify. It's human nature. We want to protect ourselves. But reacting in the heat of the moment doesn't protect you. It exposes you. When you learn to pause, even for just a couple of seconds, you create space. In that space, you regain control. You get to choose whether to respond calmly, redirect the conversation, or even decide that it's not worth engaging at all. That pause is like a reset button. It keeps you from being pulled into their storm and lets you stay grounded in yours. Here's the thing. Most people are not actually listening to your words in those tense moments. They're feeling your energy. If you come in hot, they get hotter. If you stay calm, it forces them to either match you or look like the one who's out of control for control. That's how you shift the dynamic without saying a single extra word. So the next time you feel that surge of emotion and your mouth is ready to run, stop for just 2 seconds. Breathe, think, then speak. Those 2 seconds are the difference between losing control and keeping it. Another way people lose control without realizing it is by over-explaining. And at first, it feels like the smart thing to do. You think, if I can just explain myself clearly enough, they'll understand. They'll see my side. This whole thing will calm down. So you start talking. And then you keep talking. You pile on more words, more details, more justifications, hoping that somewhere in that mountain of explanation, they'll finally get it. But here's what actually happens. The more you explain, the weaker your position becomes. When you over-explain, you're sending a silent message you probably don't even mean to send. I need you to agree with me before I can feel okay. And the other person picks up on that immediately. It shifts the balance of power. Instead of standing firm in your truth, you start chasing their approval, and now you're not communicating from a place of confidence. You're negotiating for validation. Have you ever noticed how over-explaining usually leads to more arguments, not fewer? Too far. It's because when you keep adding words, you also add openings. Openings for them to challenge you, twist your meaning, or pull you into side issues that don't even matter. Suddenly, the conversation isn't about the core issue anymore. It's about defending every little thing you said along the way. Let me give you an example. Imagine someone accuses you of being late and not caring about their time. If you respond with, "I'm so sorry, but traffic was bad, and then I couldn't find parking, and then I had to grab something from my car," and you've just given them 3 more things to argue about. They might say, "Oh well, you should have left earlier," or "You always do this." And now you're stuck defending yourself point by point instead of standing on solid ground. But if you keep it simple and direct, something like, "You're right. I was late. It won't happen again." There's nothing for them to grab onto. The conversation ends before it spirals out of control. Here's the truth. Confident communication is almost always concise. The less you say, the clearer your message becomes. That doesn't mean you cut people off or refuse to explain when it's truly necessary. It means you stop trying to control their reaction by piling on words. You don't need to prove yourself. You don't need to fill every silence. When you find yourself tempted to keep talking, pause and ask, "Am I explaining? Or am I defending? Or am I defending?" Because those are 2 very different things. One comes from strength, the other from fear. The goal isn't to convince them of your worth or your intentions. The goal is to communicate clearly and move forward. Sometimes the most powerful thing you can say is the least amount possible. There's another mistake that quietly steals your control, and it happens so fast you don't even notice it in the moment. It's matching someone else's energy, and I don't mean in a positive way. I'm talking about when someone comes at you with anger, sarcasm, or frustration, and before you realize it, you're meeting them right there. Same tone, same volume, same attitude. It feels natural, almost instinctive. Someone raises their voice, so yours rises too. They get sarcastic, you get sarcastic right back. They roll their eyes, and you start matching that body language without even thinking. In the moment, it feels like you're standing your ground, like you're not going to let them push you around. But what's really happening is they've set the temperature of the conversation, and you've agreed to live in their climate. When you match their energy, you're no longer leading. You've handed them the steering wheel, and now you're just reacting. It doesn't matter how calm you were at the start. Once you let their tone dictate yours, you've lost control of yourself, and the conversation is headed straight for a collision. Here's the trap. We think that by matching their intensity, we're showing strength. But strength isn't about volume or emotion. Real strength is being the one who refuses to get swept up in someone else's storm. Staying calm when everything around you is chaotic. And that's not easy because emotions are contagious. When someone is angry, they want you angry too. It's a way to pull you into their frame, where they feel powerful and you feel off balance. Think about the last heated argument you had. At some point, you probably weren't even fighting about the original issue anymore. You were just fighting about who was louder, who was ruder, who was more hurt. More hurt. That's what happens when you match energy. You create a spiral where nothing gets resolved, and both people walk away feeling misunderstood and frustrated. The key is to set the tone instead of mirroring theirs. That doesn't mean you stay silent or let them walk all over you. It means you stay steady. Your tone stays calm, your words stay clear, and your body language stays relaxed. This forces the other person to make a choice, either meet you where you are or look like the one who's completely out of control. It takes discipline to do this. You have to remind yourself in the moment their tone doesn't control mine. Their energy doesn't dictate mine. Because the second you start mirroring them, you've stepped into their world, and now you're playing by their rules. The most powerful person in any conversation isn't the loudest one. It's the one who can stay calm no matter how loud everyone else gets. At some point, no matter how careful you are, a conversation is going to go off the rails. Emotions will run high, voices will rise, and you'll feel that familiar tension building inside your chest. It's in those moments that most people either shut down completely or jump into the chaos headfirst. But there's another option, a way to pivot the conversation back to a place where you can think clearly and respond instead of react. This is where calm becomes your greatest advantage. Calm isn't about ignoring what's happening or pretending everything is fine. It's about creating a pause in the middle of the storm so you can regain control of yourself before you decide your next move. Because here's the truth. You cannot de-escalate a heated situation from a heated state. If you try to fight fire with fire, you both end up burned. The pivot starts with your body, not your words. When you notice your heart racing or your jaw tightening, slow yourself down physically first. Breathe deeply, unclench your fists, lower your shoulders. This might sound simple, but it's powerful. Your body sends signals to your mind. If your body is calm, your brain will follow. Once you've grounded yourself, shift the conversation by changing your tone. People often think the words matter most, but tone sets the stage for how those words are received. Lower your voice slightly. Speak slower. When you do this, you're sending a message that you're in control, and it subtly invites the other person to come down to your level. Here's a practical way to do this. Instead of defending yourself or firing back, acknowledge what you've heard with a simple statement like, "I hear that you're frustrated," or "I understand this matters to you." Notice you're not agreeing. You're not admitting fault. You're just showing that you've heard them. This doesn't solve the problem, but it lowers the temperature enough to get back to a productive place. From there, you can redirect the conversation toward solutions instead of staying stuck in accusations. A great way to do this is by asking calm, clear questions. What would a good outcome look like for you? Or what can we do to move forward? These questions shift the focus away from who's to blame and toward what can actually be done. The hardest part about using this pivot is your ego. In the heat of the moment, you'll want to prove you're right. You'll want to get the last word. But if you can let go of that need, even for a few seconds, you'll be amazed at how quickly the energy shifts. Staying calm doesn't mean you've lost the fight. It means you changed the game entirely. And now, you're the one setting the rules. At the end of any tough conversation, what really matters isn't who got the last word or who sounded smarter. What matters is how you walk away from it. Whether you leave with your integrity intact, your boundaries clear, and the relationship, if possible, still standing. This is what I mean by owning the outcome. It's not about winning. It's about choosing how the conversation ends, no matter how the other person behaves. Too often, people let the other person dictate the ending. If the other person storms off, they storm off too. If the other person shuts down, they shut down. If the other person goes low, they go lower. By doing that, you hand over control and let someone else write the final chapter of that exchange. And you always end up feeling unsettled, replaying the moment in your head, wishing you'd handled it differently. Owning the outcome begins long before the last words are spoken. It starts with being clear about what you will and won't tolerate. When you know your boundaries, you don't need to shout or defend them. You simply state them and follow through. Boundaries aren't about controlling the other person's behavior. They're about controlling your own response to their behavior. For example, if someone continues to raise their voice, you don't need to match them or plead with them to stop. You calmly say, "I want to have this conversation, but I won't do it while we're yelling. If this continues, I'm stepping away." And then you follow through. That's how you maintain dignity while protecting yourself. Here's the thing. People may not respect what you say in the moment, but they will always remember how you carry yourself. If you lose your temper, slam doors, or hurl insults, that becomes the story they tell themselves about you. But if you stay composed and consistent, even when they don't, you set a tone they can't ignore. Sometimes owning the outcome means deciding to disengage. Walking away doesn't mean you've lost. It means you've recognized that the conversation is no longer productive and you've chosen to protect your peace instead of feeding the fire. There's power in simply saying, "This isn't going anywhere right now. Let's revisit it later." You leave the situation on your terms, not theirs. When you focus on how you show up and how you leave, you take the guesswork out of conversations. You can't control what they say or do, but you can control what you say and do.